Let me begin with a peculiar image. Imagine opening an old journal in a forgotten attic. Dust drifts through a single beam of sunlight, and as you turn the fragile pages, you discover a story written in your own handwriting. Yet you have no memory of writing it. The characters feel familiar, strangely intimate, as if they were shaped from the edges of your dreams. And then a curious realization dawns. The main character is you. But here is the real puzzle. The self you think you are right now, the identity you cling to as solid and undeniable, is just such a story. A narrative so long repeated, so deeply inhabited, that you have forgotten you are its author. The self is a story, and you forgot you wrote it. Now, this is not an accusation, it is an invitation. Because once you see that the self is not a rigid stone, but a flowing tale, things begin to loosen. You stop trying to defend every chapter as if it were carved in eternal ink. You become curious again. You breathe easier. When we are young, we start collecting words and roles like little treasures. Someone says you are clever, or sensitive, or stubborn, or slow. And we absorb these labels the way a forest absorbs rain, slowly, quietly, without noticing the change. Before long, we arrange ourselves around these descriptions as if they were the boundaries of our being. We build a self the way a spider spins a web, except we forget we were the spider. Eventually, we find ourselves trapped in our own threads, believing firmly that the web is who we are. But the truth is softer, more fluid. The self is a moving thing, a melody rather than a monument. It shifts with each season of your life, yet you insist it must remain the same. You cling to the old tune, even when your heart is already humming a new one. Have you ever noticed how different you feel depending on who you are with? With one person, you are confident. With another, cautious. With another, you dissolve into laughter. Which of these is the real you? All of them, and none of them. The self is not a statue, but a performance, a dance, a mask worn by something far deeper and far more mysterious than your name, your memories, or your habits. Consider for a moment the surface of a lake. If you look at it one day, it is still and glass-like. Another day, restless with ripples. Another, wild with wind. But is the lake defined by the shape on its surface, or by the water itself, clear and calm beneath all motion? You are the water. The self is the shifting surface. Yet somewhere in the journey of living, we trade the fluid truth for a rigid identity. We say things like, "This is just how I am," or "I could never do that." And with each declaration, we tighten the story, scribbling the margins closed, refusing the possibility that another chapter is waiting to be written. But consider this. If the self is a story, why take it so seriously? Why cling to each paragraph as if the universe demanded you remain unchanged? Stories are meant to grow, to twist, to surprise even the author. Here is another image. Imagine an actor who becomes so immersed in their role that they forget it is a performance. They begin to fear everything their character fears, desire everything the character desires. And then, one day, as they look out beyond the stage lights, they remember, "Ah, yes, I was only playing." Life is very much like this. You play a role so convincingly that you mistake it for your true nature. But behind the role, behind all the masks, there is a silent awareness watching the performance unfold. That awareness is the real you, the timeless witness that cannot be hurt by the story's tragedies or inflated by its triumphs. It simply experiences. And once you sense that witnessing presence, once you feel the gentle hum beneath your personality, something remarkable happens. The story becomes lighter. The character becomes more playful. The world becomes less something you endure and more something you explore. You do not abandon the story. You simply stop confusing it with the author. The moment you stop clinging to your narrative, a peculiar freedom arises. You realize you are not trapped in the story. You have been writing it all along. You see, freedom is not the absence of form. It is the ability to shape form without believing you are imprisoned by it. When you recognize the self as a story, you gain the capacity to edit, rewrite, or even turn the page entirely. Not out of desperation, but out of curiosity, out of the sheer delight of seeing what might happen next. Now let us explore something a little more unsettling, yet profoundly liberating. If the self is a story you forgot you wrote, then every moment of fear that arises from defending that story begins to soften. The fear of imperfection, the fear of being misunderstood, the fear of change, loss, failure. These fears only have power when you believe the story must remain intact. But when you remember that you are not the character, that you are the author, you see that even the painful chapters have a place. They are brushstrokes in a larger painting. Ask yourself, have you ever known a great tale without moments of confusion, heartbreak, or uncertainty? It is precisely these moments that give the story depth. Yet you resist them, believing life has made some terrible mistake. You say, "Why is this happening to me?" But the question is backwards. Who is the me this is happening to? A name? A memory? A character in a narrative stitched together moment by moment. And if the character changes, the story continues. All stories do. Let me offer you another metaphor, one from the natural world. Imagine a caterpillar who believes absolutely in its identity. It crawls, it eats, it inches along leaves and branches, convinced that this is what life is. Then, one day, without asking permission, life begins to rewrite the script. The caterpillar dissolves into a formless state within its cocoon. If it had the mind of a human, it would scream. It would cling desperately to the story of being a caterpillar. But the transformation is unstoppable, and, eventually, the creature awakens as something it never expected. A story rewritten by a deeper intelligence. You too are being rewritten endlessly by life, and the moments that feel like dissolution are often the beginnings of flight. Now, you might ask, if the self is a story, then what am I really? What is the thing behind the narrative? Listen closely. You are the awareness in which the story unfolds. You are the consciousness that watches, experiences, responds, and allows. You are the space in which the character appears, the sky through which clouds drift, the ocean from which waves rise and return. You do not vanish when the story shifts. You remain, steady and luminous, like the quiet hum beneath all sound. Once you feel this, something beautiful happens. You begin to live with less tension. You loosen the grip on who you think you must be, and life begins to breathe for you. You stop performing authenticity and simply become present. There is nothing left to chase because nothing is missing. You are already whole, not as a character in your story, but as the awareness that makes the story possible. Let us step more deeply into the human realm for a moment. Think of relationships. How often do we demand that the other person remain consistent with the version we have created in our minds? We cling to their character as fiercely as we cling to our own. But when you recognize that everyone is a story, and that all stories evolve, you grant others permission to grow, to change, to surprise you. Love becomes spacious, less like ownership and more like witnessing a beautiful unfolding. Or think of time. We often imagine time as a straight line on which we drag our story forward. But when you see through the illusion of the fixed self, time itself softens. The past becomes a memory, not a prison. The future becomes a possibility, not a threat. And the present, this moment, right now, becomes the only place the author and the story ever truly meet. Now, as we approach the quiet end of this reflection, I invite you to consider one final vision. Imagine standing in front of a mirror. You see your face, your expression, the familiar features you call me. Look closely. Behind the shape of the face, behind the eyes, there is a light, a subtle presence, a sense of I am that is older than your memories, untouched by your story. It does not age, it does not fear, it simply is. This presence is the true author of your life. The story will continue, as all stories do, but you are no longer confined to its pages. You can turn them gently, lovingly, without panic. You can watch the character evolve and say, yes, let this be the next chapter. So as you move forward from this moment, remember, you are not the story. You are the storyteller, and the storyteller is free.